In a small town nestled deep within the countryside, there stood a hospital shrouded in mystery and whispers of the unknown. It was said that the hospital had a dark history, with tales of unexplained occurrences and restless spirits haunting its halls. This was the backdrop for a chilling horror story that unfolded one fateful night. Sarah, a dedicated nurse with a compassionate heart, had recently joined the hospital staff. She had worked in several healthcare facilities before, but little did she know that her tenure at this particular hospital would be fraught with unimaginable terror. On a moonlit evening, Sarah found herself assigned to the Alzheimer's ward, a place where time seemed to stand still and reality blurred. The elderly patients in this ward, lost in the depths of their own minds, found solace in Sarah's youthful presence. They saw her as a beacon of light, a connection to the present moment. Among the patients, there was one named Mrs. Anderson, an elderly woman plagued by paranoia and delusions. She often spoke of sinister voices and a mysterious man dressed in black who lurked in the shadows of her room. The other patient in the shared room, Mrs. Jenkins, pleaded with Sarah to close the curtains to keep Mrs. Anderson away, fearing the unsettling presence that haunted her. As the night wore on, Sarah attended to the various needs of the patients. But it was Mrs. Anderson who demanded more of her attention. Every time Sarah entered her room, Mrs. Anderson would tremble in fear, recounting the eerie whispers and the malevolent figure she saw in the corner. Sarah, though unnerved herself, tried her best to calm the elderly woman and lull her to sleep, mindful of not disturbing the other patient. The hours ticked by, and the ward grew quieter as sleep enveloped most of the patients. Sarah, exhausted from her grueling shift and running on little sleep, took a moment to restock supplies in the linen room. The silence in the room was palpable, broken only by the sound of Sarah's footsteps echoing against the walls. Suddenly, a strange noise pierced the stillness, causing Sarah to freeze in her tracks. She strained her ears, trying to identify the source of the sound. The room, usually tranquil, now felt suffocatingly oppressive. Determined to dismiss her unease, Sarah resumed her task, but then she felt it, a chilling touch on her shoulder. Startled, Sarah spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. Yet, there was nothing there, no one in the room with her. The sensation of a large hand gripping her shoulder lingered, sending shivers down her spine. She hesitantly peered into the hallway, expecting to see another nurse, but the corridor was desolate, devoid of any signs of life. Shaken but determined to carry on, Sarah gathered her composure and returned to her duties. As she filled her cart, she positioned herself to face the door. But to her horror, as she turned, she found herself collapsing to the floor in a paroxysm of terror. Standing just outside the glass door was a man dressed in black, his eerie smile sending waves of dread coursing through her veins. Sarah's screams reverberated through the ward, awakening the slumbering patients from their peaceful respite. Nurses rushed to her aid, their bewildered expressions matching Sarah's traumatized state. But when they entered the room, the man in black had vanished, leaving behind only lingering fear and unanswered questions. Seeking solace and reassurance, Sarah turned to Mrs. Anderson, hoping for some semblance of understanding. She asked the elderly woman about the man in black, describing his smile. To Sarah's astonishment, Mrs. Anderson's expression shifted, her eyebrows furrowing as she asked, "How did you know?" In that moment, Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Mrs. Anderson began to scream, her voice filled with terror. "Get me out of here. He's coming." The other nurses rushed to calm her, while Sarah was promptly reassigned to a different ward for her own well-being. Overwhelmed by the night's events, Sarah reached out to the head nurse, expressing her trauma and her reluctance to return to the hospital. Days passed, but the memory of that harrowing night lingered in Sarah's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural had transpired. The hospital, with its dark history and unexplained occurrences, seemed to hold secrets beyond comprehension. As Sarah reflected on her ordeal, she couldn't help but wonder if her mind had played tricks on her, influenced by Mrs. Anderson's relentless tales and the shared experience of the man in black. But deep down, Sarah knew that what she had witnessed was far more than a mere hallucination. It was a chilling encounter with the supernatural, an encounter she hoped would never be repeated. In the end, Sarah made the difficult decision to leave the hospital, unable to bear the weight of the inexplicable lurking within its walls. The townsfolk continued to whisper about the hospital, warning others of the dark forces that resided there. The hospital, forever marked by the events of that night, remained a place of fear and trepidation. Sarah's departure from the hospital did little to quell the unease that permeated the town. Over time, more stories emerged, stories of other nurses and patients who had encountered the man in black, each encounter leaving its victims scarred and haunted. Local authorities attempted to investigate the hospital and its eerie history, but their efforts were met with resistance and a veil of secrecy. The hospital's administrators vehemently denied any knowledge of supernatural occurrences, dismissing the stories as mere superstition and hysteria. However, the stories persisted, spreading like wildfire through the town. People began to avoid the hospital altogether, opting for alternative healthcare options in neighboring towns. The once thriving institution fell into disrepair, its halls echoing with the whispers of the past. Years passed, and the hospital became a forgotten relic of the town's dark history. But its legacy endured, as did the tales of the man in black. Some believe that the hospital was cursed, a place where restless spirits congregated and tormented the living. To this day, the hospital stands in eerie silence, a testament to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying things are not the ones that can be seen or explained, but rather the ones that lurk in the shadows, waiting to prey on unsuspecting souls. The town's residents still recount the legend of the hospital, passing down the stories from one generation to the next. They caution against venturing too close, fearing that the man in black still wanders its empty corridors, forever seeking his next victim. And so, the hospital remains a haunting reminder of the darkness that can reside even in the most ordinary of places. It serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are rooted in truth, forever etching themselves into the fabric of a town's history.